All right, so today is the last day of rotational grazing school with Judy. I think we've had a blast. How about you?
It's been good.
It has been really good. Getting out of the parking lot here. I'm not touching this on the road. Don't do distracted driving, kids. The people at this have been some of the nicest, friendliest individuals, and I don't think I'm speaking just for myself here, although you're here, you can vouch whether or not I'm nailing this right.
Yeah.
The fact that we're around so many similar-minded human beings and so many creatives who don't think they're like, yeah, I do this. We were talking to a lady yesterday who dyes her own yarn.
Yeah, she has wool sheep, and was that the road?
No, this is it.
Oh, okay. That was confusing.
I know.
So she dyes her own wool and hand spins it. The dye that she showed us yesterday was an indigo that she grows. So like, it's amazing, and it was such a beautiful blue, such a deep blue color. It was amazing. Yeah,
gorgeous.
it was really cool. Yeah.
The lady we were riding in the pickup truck with, they do like custom organic dog food or something, dog treats.
Yeah.
Like, you think there's, when we've talked to people about how we're going to do this, and they go, I don't understand, like, the business model. This is the first time we've been amongst a group of people where no one has to explain the business model.
Right. It's really interesting, and I guess kind of eye-opening, because we have a million ideas of things that we're going to just stack. Because, if you can get have the same amount of space and get output on, 10 different levels, then you're killing it. Because when one thing isn't working, you've got 9 other things that are working. And all of these people really understand that and are talking about how they're doing that as well, but in their very own, very unique way, which is really cool.
It's incredibly...
It's very inspiring, because this regenerative agriculture movement is kind of new still, even though people have been doing it for
a long time,
20, 60 years, like depending on who they are and where they are in the world.
That's the other thing, is like the years of, like, the names of people we've never heard of. Like, this guy kind of started this, and it was like, when did that happen? Like, that's the 1700s.
Right.
Like, what?
Yeah. Information about, I don't know. Anyway, we can dive deep, but it's cool to see other people who are really excited about regenerative agriculture, fixing our food systems, providing their neighbors and friends and families with healthy food, trying to, save the environment, which is a lot of people's inspiration. Yeah, it's been really eye-opening and also very comforting, because we're not the only weirdos.
When you understand the fundamentals of this, then you understand that there can be a few ways to do it, and then there are some absolute no-nos. And you already know what those are. Subject, not that we're experts. We've got a lot to learn, and that's why we're doing all this. But when you've got the basics of this down, you get it. There's a big bird down there. I couldn't. No. You already get it. You're left with answering questions and like, yeah, but what if, my uncle does this type of farming, and it's like, yeah, but what he's doing is not regenerative. It's not a stack system.
Yeah.
It's not permaculture in any stretch. It's not even sustainable. That's why your uncle isn't doing well.
Right.
Like, we listen to people talk about this and their plans for the future, and they're starting off, we've had a few people on our social media pages who are like, oh, I want to start a farm, and then I watch them and I go, no, don't do that. That's what you're about to do is going to be a very costly mistake. Don't do it. Like, do these in this order, and then like 2 days later, they're like, maybe this type of farm. I'm like, yes, you could do that, but start here. Don't go out and purchase anything. Like, you need to learn the systems first.
Right.
And the reason we say this is because not only is regenerative and, I don't want to use permaculture, but regenerative agriculture, not only is it better for the planet because we're not using chemicals, we're not forcing nature, we're working with her, it also doesn't require the same type of investiture as far as technology goes.
Right.
But the first thing people think when it comes to farming is, you guys got to buy a tractor and you guys need a barn. And I was like, no, none of those things. That is not
the only thing we need a barn for is studio space.
Right. Like, this idea that you're gonna spend, $100,000 on a tractor. No. I'm not going into $100,000 in debt to have something I use once every 6 months. I could rent that.
Right.
And you got to get people to think outside of
what you understand farming to be. And that's, I think, the biggest thing is we've all been sold this idea of what farming is, and most of it is contemporary farming that does more damage to the environment, that does more damage to the ecosystem and the habitat of the area than it does help. And while, yes, you may raise your own food, if you're feeding your cows grain, you might as well just go buy it in the store.
Exactly.
If you're, not letting your animals, you got pigs and you're not putting them out into pasture or in the woods so they can eat all those acorns and get some of their food from forage, then you're kind of not making the most of having a pig.
Right.
And you'll definitely not be getting as good quality meat as if you let the pig just be a pig and not just feed it corn.
That's like one of the biggest ones too, is that people want to do things with animals that aren't in the nature of the animal.
Right.
Nobody goes out to the woods and puts a house around a deer, but a deer's a ruminant, a cow's a ruminant. But people are like, why aren't the cows in a barn? Why would the cows be in a barn?
To be in a barn.
Why would that make sense?
Yeah.
This animal lives outside 24/7. Like, Greg Judy talks about, a standing group of cedars is basically a growing barn. And we got to see that, a little glimpse of that yesterday. I took some pictures. And you can see it. Like, there's protection from the wind. Like, the cows are happy. Why would you stick them in a barn?
Right.
Where in nature does that happen?
Right.
And human beings are so confused about nature and processes around nature that they don't trust nature anymore. They're afraid of nature. That's why we have shows like Naked and Afraid. Hey, this is what we did for most of human history. Want to watch this?
Like, it's only been 200 years since we weren't growing our own food entirely, and now since we've separated ourselves, and really it's really been more like 100 years since a little bit after the Great Depression that we really stopped relying on ourselves for our own food. Like our grandparents' parents had to raise food for their families, especially during the Great Depression, because there wasn't another option. I don't know the timeline on like when supermarkets started to be a thing, but like
40s and 50s.
Yeah, since then we've been super separated. That hasn't even, it's been like 2 generations, not even 2 generations.
Not even.
Of people that have been raised away from their food source, and that has done terrible things because none of us respect the food that we're eating. None of us understand how sacred it is to eat, period, because you're taking life to maintain life or create life. And when you used to grow your own plants and you grow your own meat, you would have every part, your hand is in every part of that process. So you understand how difficult and how important it is to do the right things, because that is literally your family's survival. And we don't have that because we can go to the supermarket or go to the corner store and pick up some Doritos.
and even more to the fact that this used to be the way it was done. If you're a person who has a similar spiritual background to us, and you think of the runes, and in my opinion, you think of Fehu. And if you look at the rune for Fehu, which is the rune for wealth, you're looking at, in my opinion, one way to view that is the grain and grasses in a field as they tip to the side. You can almost see the letter. And wealth is also cattle. If you were working in harmony with nature and you were grazing cattle as they did thousands of years ago, where they're not restricted the same way, they're following a shepherd around, you're working them in different areas, you knew that that meant wealth because that was your way to grow the best food. Yeah. And it was the most prized thing. And in the heathen Celtic traditions, cattle, livestock, are a great strength to people. In fact, one of the reasons why, if you look in the book Guns, Germs, and Steel, one of the reasons that the people coming to North America didn't get smallpox is because they did something that no other group did, which they actually lived with their animals. Yep. The heathens, the Celts, they all lived with their animals. That's something we fantasize about someday. And because they were around their animals, their allergies were not as bad. Their susceptibility to certain... Oh, there's a deer. That one didn't make it. Obviously. Dark humor. Okay. And, you know, it's one of those things where you're around something, you know. In dairy operations, it's very rare for someone who works in a dairy operation to have any type of allergy. The animals are breathing in particulate, they're processing it in their rumen, they're excreting it as a sterile fecal product. That fecal product, while not devoid of bacteria unless you're treating them with something, does contain all the particulate of the allergens that they digested. Their body figured out a way to break it down, and some of that gets aerosolized. And basically scientists think that just breathing in the dried fecal particulate from ruminants who are eating grasses makes you almost inoculated against the allergen. Your body's getting a less intense version of that through the fecal particulate, which sounds weird, but that's how that works. And you don't have allergies the same way. If you drink raw milk, you don't have them. In fact, we drank raw milk all spring and early summer, and we didn't have really any problems with allergies compared to what we usually have. Then we slowed down
because we couldn't get out there because our one day off is the one day at their class.
Right. So then we couldn't get it, and we noticed our allergies got worse. When, you know, now that Kaylee's coming to New Hampshire tattoo, it's kind of like our tattoo family's getting back together.
Yeah.
When she first brought Santo in, I had kind of a reaction to Santo. And I'm not the only one who has this reaction. But I know that every day I'm around him, it gets better because my body recognizes that that's not a problem.
Right.
Well, even more to the fact, if I was around farm animals every day, even less of an issue.
Yep, this is our example.
Yep. A couple things we're going to throw out there. I'm going to be sharing more stuff from the Greg Judy seminar, but I'm not sharing all the information for two reasons. One, I'm not going to be able to present it in a way that's going to do it justice. He's the expert. I'm not. Him and this other gentleman, Greg Brown, they're the experts. They're the presenters. If you want to understand this stuff, you can do what we did. You can get books on it. Greg Judy has several books. You can watch the YouTube channel. You can, even better, come do a rotational grazing seminar.
There is one in May, and they usually do May and September. So I think that is the plan for 2021 as well. It is, if this is something that you're really serious about, it is well worth the investment.
Oh, it's well worth the investment.
Even like, and one of the things we were worried about is if it was just going to be way too over our heads because we don't have any experience. But the range of people that are at these schools is is so broad. People like us who are interested, who want to get started and don't know where to start, to people who just bought land and are just starting to buy animals, to people who have been doing it their entire lives who want to do it better.
You can't even make it up. Everything from like a group of grandparents who just want to secure their farm that's been in the family for 5 and soon to be 6 generations, so that their grandchildren can be the 7th generation owner, so they have the option to do it.
Right.
They flat out said they're too old to really do it, but 65 years old, they're going to start doing this. But they're doing it because they want to pass it on.
Right.
We're literally taking classes with cowboys. Like, you've seen them on the video, like literal cowboys, like exactly what you're thinking. People who do this professionally, people who've never done this, like there's a few people there that are like city jobs, they have no experience with animals, and they're like, there too.
There is something for everyone, and a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, because it's a handful of people out of the 100 or so. This is not their first time coming. And they said, every time I've been here, I've asked different questions and learned something new. There's more information that I can absorb, even if it's exactly the same information they're going over, which it isn't. It's generally the same information, but I'm sure they have more stories and more tales to tell. But there's new ways of thinking of things, and once you get a year worth of experience, or 2 years worth of experience, or 3 years worth of experience, you go back, you take it again, you learn more. So
I'm going to say right up front that I don't think I ever released them, but this spring when we were still in Salem, I did a few videos on trying to explain how rotational grazing works. And in the next month, I think I'm going to go through those videos and actually show you where I was right and where I was way off. And that's just the beginning, because the more we learned about this, the more it's like, oh, that little thing. There's these little things that change drastically the outcome. Like in ways you can't. As simple as when Joel Salatin says, don't get a chicken trough feeder that has a 90-degree angle at the top that's straight out. It has to have a lip or a roll bar, because if you don't, you'll waste thousands of dollars in feed every year. Well, if you think that's bizarre, the same things happen with rotational grazing. But one more thing I want to add to this is one of the things that really inspired me about Greg Judy is that over the last few years of watching him, he will go out of his way to point out how important his wife Jan is to the entire operation. And watching them interact reminded us of us. She reins him in. They balance each other out beautifully. They're very complimentary of each other. We got to talk to her yesterday. She does stained glass. She's very modest about it. I actually think it's really great. She does quilting, which is really awesome. And she's always challenging herself as an artist and to grow as a human being. And it's pretty obvious when you watch it that while he might be the conductor, she is the glue to the entire operation. Without Jan Judy, I don't think you have this. And that's not being disrespectful to Greg. I bet Greg would say the same thing. So it's really one of those things where, as a couple, watching another couple do this and do it successfully, and especially when he's off on some tangent, she'll be like, it's 5 o'clock. Like, it's time to wrap it up. Shut up. It's like, yeah, I get you. And that is something that when people go, I could never do this, my spouse would never be into this. Look, we come at this from 2 different angles. Teak approaches this from the angle of plants. I approach this from the angle of animals. But we're learning all the time more about the other's passion, and we're learning how we're going to integrate this and have a successful system. And again, and people say, what if it doesn't work? What if what doesn't work? What if what doesn't work?
Yeah.
What if we only can grow a little bit of food for ourselves and are only marginally successful in that? Then that's still success.
That's better than a grocery store.
Much better. And that's how we, when we look at this, we think to ourselves, why would we buy a regular house with no yard? Why would we not grow our own food?
Right.
And then if we're going to do that, why are we not doing it with a more serious angle?
Yep.
So even if we're doing it on a serious angle and we're just producing for ourselves and we stopped some land from becoming chopped up into little goofy, plots of 1 acre that don't benefit anybody. Like if we can hold on to some land and even grab more of it and put it in, conservancy and put it in agriculture only or conservation land only, and keep it from being developed, and force people to spread out a little bit and force people to do more of this, then we won't lose it to development. Right. We won't be more lost as generations go by.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a lot.
That was.
All right. And for all of you watching at home right now, I figured I'd face the camera forward. This is 50 miles an hour right here. I honestly, I'm just doing 50 now. I have trouble doing the speed limit on these roads. I do under the speed limit because this is just, well, if you like to drive, I suppose this is great, but this is wildly nauseating for the two of us. I am not a fan of this. Hey, you're going 55 down this hill. Like a deer jumps out right here, you're done.
Oh yeah, and yesterday there were deer on the side of the road.
Yeah,
like
you
literally about to cross.
You saw that in the video. Yeah, you're gonna see that in the video, the last video. Yeah, it's that's that. Walk right out in front of us. We saw a dead one on the highway. Yeah. There are not. I feel like there aren't that many near the roads out here. It's not like what we see in New Hampshire, but I don't know, man. They also, those deer behaved funny. They took off when we slowed down. They were like, no, I'm not sticking around. Yeah. Which makes me wonder if it's more like, upper parts of Maine where I have relatives where people kind of stick a flashlight out the window to hunt deer, if you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Not so good.
There's not going to be much to eat on that sacrifice field, unless you went out and grilled it. You could put a winter annual in there, a cereal rye or something. You're going to have some grazing later on in the spring, early spring, but you're not going to have anything like that.
We're here.
Figure out what's going on up ahead. I think it might just be a...
But like when you pull your poles out, you notice how, if you keep a lot of cover.
How you doing, pretty lady?
Pull out and feel the bottom of it, it's not cool.
Thank you.
it, but yeah.
The amount of insect activity out here is amazing. Look at all the spots for animals. If I'm out here hunting, that looks like a corridor. This is beautiful. If you've watched some of Greg Judy's videos, you'll see at a certain point where they're clearing cedars. We've got the cedars stacked so they can get to them with the sawmill. We are on our way to the sawmill. Greg said it's a really nice one. He's got some people buy sports cars, like he says. He bought a sawmill with all the bells and whistles. If I had to choose one, I would definitely say that I would love to get a, somebody's yelling. Oh, it's the dogs. The guardian dogs. Oh, they don't sound happy?
Yeah. So I want to make more.
Fresh manure.
This is the St. Croix across. They've got the Todd Minum, Barbados Blackbelly, Florida Native, and just a tiny bit of Dorper. We've got 5 guardian dogs in there with them. That one that's running over there, that's the one we just got back. That's the female of the dog. Here, look at her. She's going underneath the dog feeder right now. She's going to get her a snack. So let's walk up by the dog feeder and I'll show you. Droppers in here, and now today we've never lost a sheep since we did that. Same mineral feeder as the cows, except for this one has copper in it, and the sheep, the cattle mineral feeder does not.
They want to
Bad.
put it's a good patch of it,
Alright.
like right behind your knee.
Okay.
So we may just want to put like a
Towel or something.
towels or a bandana down or something.
I sat in poop. Teresa was right there. She didn't stop me.
I wasn't right there. You did it while you were sitting 20 feet away.
I was like, she's not looking. Now's my chance.
Yeah, I think that's probably more like
You're married 22 years. You want to do something filthy. Well, there you go. I'm filthy now, kids. And the wife wasn't into it, but you know, whatever. So now that we're at the end of the weekend, or at the end of the grazing school, how do you feel about it?
it's a lot.
It's a lot to process, guys.
But it's exciting, so.
Yeah, and when we left to do this, we've been hammering YouTube videos for a long time now, and I didn't think there'd be this much information, and on day one we both left almost pretty overwhelmed because of the amount of volume of information. As we're here on day 3, it's not as overwhelming. I would love to see this as a week-long course. I wish I had the time, energy, and funds to do this as an internship, because I feel like doing this every day, you'd learn so much more. It's one of those things that you can't, there's so many things you can't get from a book. And they're little tweaks, they're little things, how you do stuff that make things more efficient. Like the Joel Salatin thing about chicken feeders I keep going into. You know, they can save you thousands. Or Greg talking about the difference between selling a sheep that's 60-pound dress versus over 100. And the financial difference between these things. It's just fascinating.
A lot of information, really good. Also on observation, I grew up the first few years of my life across the street from the Riches. They had a farm. I was friends with Jan and Heather and Andy Rich. And when we walked into this field, it's exactly what it smelled like to me. It smelled like my grandparents' yard, which wasn't really my grandparents' yard. It was the farm right across the street. What an amazing smell. They're so cool.
And he said, I know you're busy, so I'll try and keep it brief. He said, I went to the last statement, and it was this: you can do anything you want in this world. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't. You absolutely can. This is because you've got it set up in your mind that you're going to do it. Nobody's going to tell you you can't, because you know you can do it. It may not be 1 year, but if you're willing to give it 10 years, you will come out the other side. And you're going to look back and go, man, was that a journey. And so at the bottom of it, he said, I went back to the beginning and I watched all of it, building healthy soil with ruminant animals. He said, now when I get upset, tired, frustrated, he said, I go back to that and it makes me feel like I'm a better person. You know, if you go to that video, whatever, find a mentor, find somebody that's doing it around you that's better than you are, and try and copy that person. Don't reinvent the wheel. And that work, keep an open mind, don't take no for an answer, and keep moving forward. This is too fun. This is too fun stuff. So thank you all.
Thank you. You guys, I don't know if you're seeing this. That's a golden eagle.